Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review Andrew Baird's new horror film, Sunrise. And this particular film has creatures of the night, revenge. Sounds interesting. Wish it was more interesting, but unfortunately this film doesn't really capitalize on its revenge plot or really lean in an interesting way into the fact that, like, vampires? And what's so strange about this film is it takes a very low-key approach to everything. There's definitely a dark and ominous atmosphere about the film, and I feel like cinematographer Ivan Abel helps create that, and Baird does a good job of creating some semblance of tension and suspense along the way. But what I struggled with watching this film was that there's a lot of pieces that should really work and ideas that should really work, but it decides to lean in on some really tired plot points and narrative beats instead of really leaning into some of the more creative and interesting things that this film has to offer. You have the story of Fallon, Alex Pettyfer's character, who one of the struggles of this film is really getting behind his character, because Pettyfer's performance is so flat and uninteresting. His character's flat and uninteresting. There's not a lot of depth there. Basically, the only thing that we have the connection to is, like, we feel bad because something terrible happened to his family. And you can't just use that manipulative approach for us to really care about a protagonist. There has to be some other kind of connection. And Pettyfer and Ronan Blaney's writing of this main character just don't add much at all to it. So we're stuck with him connecting with this Asian woman and her kids after her husband, something horrible happens to him at the hands of our antagonist Reynolds, played by Guy Pearce. And, you know, it doesn't really do anything new or fresh or interesting to that kind of story. It just kind of is. It's just kind of there. And then you have Reynolds and Ma Reynolds, his mother, played by Owen Fourier, and there's both of their performances add some interest, especially Guy Pearce, who's going real hard, real evil, really hamming it up here, which in another film might feel really out of place. It does kind of feel out of place here, but at least it's interesting. At least it's grabbing my attention. There's a particularly interesting scene where he's pontificating at a church, and that dynamic and him really trying to eat this all up. Guy Pearce is chewing scenery left and right. But the thing is, there's nothing done in any of the plot threads here that feels fresh or interesting. The vampire story, not really well explored or well rendered or anything of interest. The revenge plot, just kind of there. A lot of this film is just kind of there, and a strong performance from Pearce and Fury and some ambiance and some dark and intense kind of atmosphere, that's not enough to really elevate this film beyond being a passable, forgettable kind of horror film that doesn't really scare or thrill you a ton, but you see where it could have. It just never really reaches that point and feels self-actualized. And in the end, this winds up being a pretty forgettable kind of horror film. But those are my thoughts on Sunrise. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.